Greetings. The face behind the ink. So me, myself, and I, are going to read into a novel that is slightly more finished than Ironheads. Ironheads was kind of a preliminary test reading, kind of to make sure I got the gain on the camera and the gain on the zoom all working in harmony without blowing eardrums or causing anyone to have to turn the volume all the way up to be able to hear everything except for the refrigerator buzz in the next room. Experimentation. So I probably have explained this before, this particular novel. Between 2013 and 14, I'd get off of work, be in the morning, go and have a cup of coffee and some cheap breakfast. And I would sit at the laptop and I would work on whatever it was I was working on at the time. And I decided I was going to go through and brainstorm ideas. Just the craziest, most flippant, dumb, ridiculous, absurd, crazy idea that I could think of. And this was one of them. It was 3 sentences, I think it was. Gorechain. Chapter 1. What you have here is a gold mine. Frosty stood in the entry, having barreled through the front door as if he anticipated a standing ovation. He was proud of himself for saying it, the statement held in his mind as a crowning achievement of the day. Edward Gale wasn't impressed with the humor. What you have here is a gold mine, was the first thing Frosty said to Edward the day they met. Eddie was working on a skull on a trucker's bicep when Frost walked through the front door. Edward was struck by the size of the man, less than an inch between the top of Frost's head and the top of the doorframe. Frost made the whole room shrink in scale. The trucker, a regular under Eddie's tattoo gun, was impressed by Frosty's presence. "Looks like you're in trouble, Eddie. What the hell did you do now?" The trucker was always flush with dangerous and lurid stories of his travels, from stunts he pulled when he was a young man fresh out of the service, to incidents, accidents, and crimes he witnessed during his long hauls across the country. It didn't seem as if the trucker was impressed or surprised by anything anymore. He wasn't jaded or cynical, but simply lost for his capacity for surprise. The trucker wasn't a small man either, retaining much of the muscle he had when he was in the service, just with the added girth of age. The trucker glanced up at Eddie. "Not anyone you know?" "Wow, what you've got here is a gold mine. Look at all the cool pictures, wizards and skulls and dragons." The awe in Frosty's voice was genuine, the unsullied joy of a child. It was that unsullied joy which reassured both the trucker and Eddie. For certain, the big guy was just in the spirit of the moment, and not the usual customer. "What you have here is a gold mine" became a regular, if not compulsory, outburst each time Frosty walked through the front door. That proverbial shot fired at the start of a race. Since then, Frosty made comments about what a life Edward lived. Here Eddie Gale was, on a plot of asphalt all his own, at the edge of a dangerous and exciting... Whoops, messed that one up. Since then, Frosty made comments about what a life Edward lived. Here Eddie Gale was, on a plot of asphalt all his own, at the edge of a dangerous and exciting city in the desert. Geez, Eddie, what a place. It's like living in one of them black and white flicks from my dad's day, with the gangsters and the crooks and the dames and the gunfights. That's silly, Frosty. This is just a boring corner of a boring city in a boring desert, Eddie thought for a moment. Say it ain't so, Eddie. It's just like the movies. Eddie chuckled. Have you seen any gunfights? Anyone blasting away? No. Anything like that? Frosty's enthusiasm faded with his answer. No. I haven't either. Frosty rubbed his hands together, leaning on the register, looking down through the glass display case of his samples. You know as well as I, the types who come through at the front door. You got it all wrong, Frost. Eddie was cleaning behind one of the display cases. At one time he could write his own ticket with the ink he put down, young and spry and fresh-faced. Now he spent more time taking phone calls and cleaning than decorating a living flesh. Think of this building as a shipwreck, and we're stranded on an island in the middle of a big, big ocean. Frosty's simplistic amusement sparked something in his eyes. So the tough guys in the long black cars or that weird dude in the old pickup truck? Must be sharks? When Eddie had enough of Frosty's childlike wonder, he ducked out the back door for a cigarette and a long walk. Frost was good enough to hold down the shipwreck for a while. There weren't any appointments and less likely any walk-ins. Frost would be glad to tell any stranger where to go. Get lost, pal. Don't you know this here is gangster country? Gangster country. Boomtown gone bust, more like it. There was enough illicit behavior going on to keep a few local tough guys armed with sticks and knives, maybe a pistol or two, but there was always that insistence on maintaining a certain decorum. There was a balance between good and evil, between law and lawlessness, just enough for a factor of ambivalence to permeate the mind of the city. If the shallow graves were kept to a minimum, or at least far enough away from the city to not be a bother, and the murderers were silent and out of sight, all was well. Even the villains were nondescript. If violence was sex, then the gangsters were androgynous, to the point where no one identified the gangsters as men with guns, but extensions of the long black cars they rode around in. Imagine if the Cadillac's alternator or back seat got out and took care of the problem. This was as personable as the gangsters were, tools or utilities devoid of flesh and blood. The ghosts and devils of the underworld haunt the outskirts, with sly manners and dressed in style, with the substance of death smeared on their fingertips. Just as the child's fear of the monster under the bed, the foul phantoms lurk just beyond the bedroom windows of houses on the outskirts, where coyotes and ravens patrol. Beyond the edge of the city, the bodies craft ghoulish games with their bones just a few feet under the sand and soil, unless the killer was in a rush. A body pushed out from a fast-moving car, rolled in the dust by the side of the road, picked at, plucked dry, the bones scattered by scavengers. The shallow grave is a convenience for death, fast food for the underworld, Stray animals and insects don't have to work so hard for their morsels, having to exhaust themselves digging too deep into the packed earth while fending off the ravens and hawks. In time, the desert makes friends of the bones, blood packs for revenge, shallow reminders that not every crime can be hidden forever. It wasn't all that unusual to look across a city in the dead of night and see a pair of headlights bouncing along the outskirts, to hover just long enough under a cloud of dust for two men to grab some shovels and bury the evidence of a soon-to-be-forgotten crime. And that's where we're going to stop that. We will continue on Gorechain Chapter 1, Part 2 on a later date. As always, thank you for watching. Catch you later.